Hey drama lovers, one and all, it is Lex here to guide you through how I made my driving lessons playlist as inspired by the play by Paula Vogel, How I Learned to Drive. Usually when I make playlists, I think a lot about the ebbs and flows of the songs, and I always group things by 5. Because whenever you see a playlist on Spotify or Apple Music, it's usually capped around 25 to 35 songs. If it's a really popular artist or a really popular genre, then sometimes you can push it to 50, but usually it's capped. Most of them are around a median of 25 songs. This playlist in particular is exactly 35 songs. For sort of odd reasons, I definitely wanted to have very substantiated patterns within my 5 songs per rotation method of making playlists, but then it also just worked out in terms of time because you never really want people to linger on your playlist. Most people are not going to dedicate more than, I want to say, between 35 to 55 minutes on a playlist. So in order to kind of get everything to work in the groupings of things happening in sequences of 5, but also keeping time in mind, this playlist is an hour and 50 minutes long. Not to say that someone is going to exhaust themselves and listen to the playlist for that hour and 50 minutes, but I think it kind of rounds itself out in that way. But then to think about things in a more theatrical sense, longer plays, especially something like this, which is around 100 pages, would be about an hour and 50 minutes to sit down and watch from start to completion with maybe an intermission in the middle. So the first thing I really did when making this playlist is I cheated. So I went on Spotify and I searched all out 60s or 60s genre playlist because I felt like the preface and all of its directions, which were not really very many, were casting too big a net. So I decided to search some of these suggestions Vogel puts herself on this characters page, or no, rather it's the production notes page. So I searched the Roy Orbison's Dream Baby, the Mamas and the Papas, dedicated to the one I love. And as I got to the Tijuana Brass part of the production notes paragraph, I started to notice that I didn't really like a lot of the suggestions because they were a little bit too on the nose for something that I wanted to do. So then I immediately thought of Peck and Lil Bit and their introductions as characters. And one of the most profound moments for me was firstly Lil Bit telling how she got her nickname Lil Bit, but then Peck describing the first time he ever saw Lil Bit. It's page 16. The subheading is Idling in the Neutral Gear. Sound of a car revving cuts off the sacred music. Lil Bit, now an adult, rises out of the car and comes to us. Lil Bit. In most families, relatives get names like Junior or Brother or Bubba. In my family, if we call someone Big Papa, it's not because he's tall. In my family, folks tend to get nicknamed for their genitalia. Uncle Peck, for example. My mama's adage was the titless wonder, and my cousin Bobby got branded for life as BB. In unison with Greek chorus. Lil Bit, Greek chorus for blue balls. So jumping down a bit, the female Greek chorus says, as mother, and when you were born, you were so tiny that you fit in Uncle Peck's outstretched hand. Peck stretches his hand out. Peck, now that's a fact. I held you 1 day old right in this hand. So that, as opposed to the scenes flagged where there is supposed to be music, I really wanted a song for that moment when Peck first laid his eyes on her and their connection was established in just that moment of touch. So in doing my research for the 60s music, I came across this Roberta Flack song called The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face.
First time ever I saw your face, I thought the sun rose in your eyes.
So that's a very sweet and gentle, calming, almost lullaby-esque song for that moment. I really wanted those chords of, I don't know if it's harp in the background, but whatever those string chords are, to be very soft and gentle for that. And then from there, build and extrapolate and get very weird and twisted. So after that, my second song is My Girl by The Temptations, which I just couldn't not put in the playlist. It's such an irreverent song of its time period. And then I also wanted to have something from the Motown age, which was very cliche and very easily recognized by either Motown fans themselves, like myself, or someone who isn't really familiar with Motown but can still say, oh yeah, that My Girl song, I know it. For that reason, I'm not going to play that particular song. But my third song is Be Ever Wonderful by Ted Taylor. So for the first time I ever saw your face, I wanted that song to be more generic and sweet. And then I wanted My Girl to really claim Peck's feelings as, oh, Lil Bit is mine. That is my girl. She's someone who I'm claiming. There's a power dynamic there that I clearly have the upper hand in. But then with Be Ever Wonderful, I wanted that sweetness to come back a bit. And I wanted it to be very playful in the sense of both Peck and Lil Bit circumnavigating this chess with each other and this game of you're in control as much as I'm giving control away, and you're submissive as much as I'm allowing your submission to fuel my ego kind of thing. So Be Ever Wonderful kind of levels the playing field again after having had heard The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face and My Girl. So I'll just play a little bit of that. Okay, so I really love that song, and I think it's a great song for the moment when they're in the diner or wherever they are and she orders the martini. I also think it's a really great moment for the specific music tag where the Motown bass refrain comes out and the male chorus says something like doo-wop, beat-op, or something. It's on page 51. So male Greek chorus goes do, be, do, wah. Male Greek chorus unfreezes, but out of his open mouth, as if to his surprise, comes a bass refrain from a Motown song. I don't really know if this is Motown per se, but I immediately flagged the from Be Ever Wonderful for that do be do wah part. Getting into the pattern of fives. So we had the first time I ever saw, or the first time ever I saw your face, my girl, be ever wonderful. And then to totally shake things up, after we're exactly at this point where the Motown refrain comes in around page 51, I really wanted to spice something up with something so controversial and anti-Motown, and that would be Betty Davis, They Say I'm Different. Because I feel like at this point, Peck's personality as someone who's very manipulative starts to come into play. But at the same time, he knows he's only falling into a pattern of guys who act this way, especially since the waiter treats him in a certain way where if a man comes into a diner with a young girl, you give that young girl a drink despite her being underage. And there was a culture of that being allowed, but only if you tipped well. So with that, I wanted to peg a song that would really capture his ego and his privilege in thinking he's so different from whatever may have happened to him, whatever abuse pattern he's just simply repeating with Lil Bit, but also kind of poke fun at the fact that he's not as different as he thinks he is, and he's not so far removed from simply repeating that pattern of abuse, first of all, but also that pattern of trauma.
Your spirit is nothing but a dram on dram. Spit on. They say I'm different cause I eat shit, man. So I can't help it, I was born and raised on a fast rider every morning. After slumber hearts and maybe getting on humping the jolly hugger.
So that's a really great example for both characters, actually, because this whole story is really about a time in Lil Bit's life where she's very rebellious herself, and her family can easily pigeonhole her into just being in a phase and not really recognize what's going on with her and Peck's relationship and how morally compromised it is. So at this point in my little pattern of five, I wanted something that would really level things out, because we get some very strong songs lyrically within these first five songs. And I kind of feel like after all of that and after how everything shifts, it is not exactly the same chord sequence throughout those first four songs. We need something to level the playlist out and to provide a little bit of breath. So with that, I picked Spoonful by Howlin' Wolf. I never knew of this song and didn't really think it had a 60s vibe, but it's a very, very complex instrumental refrain and breath of fresh air from this playlist. And I think something like this is something that I would listen to when I was driving. So I kind of wanted to get back into the driving metaphor and the process, or even just the simple act of being in a car, turning something on, maybe hearing the melody, saying, what was that tune? What was that thing I was really vibing with?
Just a little spoon of your precious love.
not necessarily instrumental, but that refrain of that dun 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 is something that I'd get stuck in when I drive wherever little errands I run. I'd get stuck in that refrain and want to know what song that was after the fact. So this playlist is pretty long and complex, but each one of these sequences of 5 kind of has that pattern of either coming in very strong lyrically and thematically and connecting itself to the play, or coming in with the more instrumental refrain that either has that classic, recognizable 60s, maybe 70s tone, and then scaling back a bit, maybe throwing in something from a different era, and then having all this interplay with songs that would respectively be anthems for Peck or Lil Bit. And somehow, or not somehow, but the complicated ways in which their anthems are the same based off of the manipulation within their relationship. So As They Say I'm Different could be Peck's anthem. It could equally be Lil Bit's anthem. Same thing with My Cherie Amour, I Was Made to Love Her, A Woman in a Man's World, Chaka Khan, This Girl's a Woman Now. I had those songs in there for the double entendre of it being something that could be claimed by both characters. Then throughout the playlist, I really focused on the 60s bit for a while. And then I really wanted to somehow get back to the part where we know that Lil Bit is away from this now. The whole play is narrated by her 35-year-old self. And you know, even when things are at their worst, that there is a point where she breaks away, because how is she in a different gear than idling in the neutral gear or reversing? How is she driving forward if not having had shed herself of this experience or driven away somehow? So there's a part of you that knows as you're reading that there's this breakaway or this rift or this learning or this driving that actually has to happen. So right around the middle of the playlist, I have Breaking Up Is Hard to Do. And then from there, the playlist really shifts in tone and is reclaimed by the spirit of Lil Bit. We have Right Down the Line, which is mostly a song about, yeah, this is my way of telling you everything I could never say before. And that is exactly what I thought right when Lil Bit came in and said her first line, which is something to the effect of like, in order to tell a lesson, you have to tell a secret. Sometimes to tell a secret, you first have to teach a lesson, rather. So I immediately thought of this Right Down the Line song.
I just want to say this is my way of telling you everything I could never say before.
That was it right there, the little chorus. It takes a bit to get to, but you can really see the build of the song is really what makes it very cinematic. And you finally get to the chorus and it's halfway through the song. So I thought that was a very, very ironic parallel to the play overall. So at this point, there's a little bit more leveling that happens with Crazy by Patsy Cline. And then we start to get into a very bizarre but necessary Prince refrain part of this playlist. And I'm an avid Prince fan, so I didn't want to default to putting Prince into my playlist. But at the same time, I said, there has to be at least 2 or 3 songs that I'll give up for the sake of morally compromising them for the playlist and thinking about them in relation to the play. So I said, okay, not International Lover, because that's too broad. I want to really focus on that 60s American feel. But at the same time, nothing from Prince's 70s or really even 80s repertoire really fit. Then all of a sudden I started thinking of that scene where Lil Bit is finally in college and Peck is sending her all of these gifts and she gets very uncomfortable. but how we never really hear Peck's perspective during that time. And I said, he probably was playing How Come You Don't Call Me Anymore on repeat. Bet, no question about that. Then I listened to How Come You Don't Call Me Anymore, and all of the howling Prince does really just reminded me of Peck, that toxic masculinity, and then that grieving he did where eventually he drank himself to death. So I'm going to play a little bit of it, and if it takes too long to get to that part, I might jump around a bit. But this was really made sense for me to turn the playlist and have a very cinematic, dramatic effect with this Prince refrain.
Now you're gone. What a word, baby. What we had was good. How come you don't call me anymore? Yeah. Sometimes it feels like I'm gonna die. You don't come to mama, girl, got to try. Down my knees, baby, why can't you tell me sometimes, baby?
So that howling where he says he's literally down on his knees from this love and this anticipation, this grief. Exactly, Peck. So at this point, the playlist starts to get reclaimed by a little bit. Didn't mean to make that pun, but glad I did. And we have Walk On By, Dionne Warwick. A little bit of humor and poking fun at Peck again. Gigolos Get Lonely Too, Prince. Green Onions, Booker T, Puntos de Luz, just another instrumental type of refrain there, totally anti-60s in that moment. Then for the last 6 songs or so, I really wanted this to be a soliloquy of little bits. And we start off with I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free by Nina Simone. Just from the title alone, that should tell you what kind of a vibe it is. Then, again, poking a bit of fun of Peck, Don't Let Him Fool Ya, Prince, very 80s pop flashy, don't let him fool you. He may have a fancy car, he may have this look about him, but he really don't have money to afford what he got on, and he ain't shit. It's basically the vibe of that song. But then we get a little bit of a contemporary touch with the last 4 songs, which makes a lot of sense for this play because while we have these very specific markers of time, we're not told when this play takes place. So it could really be something that lives and breathes on with us because it's not set in time. And I really appreciate that timeless element Vogel puts into it and that thought she puts into it because it can be picked up by anyone and we can all learn how to drive, essentially. But within that modern refrain, I wanted to keep things a bit realistic and think about things hypothetically in the sense that we know that Lil Bit is on her journey of healing, But how does she really feel processing this? She can make a story out of it, and Vogel herself can make a play out of it. But there has to be a point where she doubts herself and she thinks that things might not get any better. And that's exactly what I was thinking about for this song, Molasses, by one of my favorite groups ever, Hiatus Kaiyote. That's pretty much a summary of that song. Then it starts into these very instrumental breaks within the song, but mostly just repeats that chorus of might not get any better, which I think is a very realistic understanding of life as someone who survives through abuse, trauma, familial dynamics, which are not ideal to say the least. It's a very good way to capture that in a realistic way. So for the last three songs, I kind of decided to mellow things out, but at the same time, I still wanted a theme song for both Lil Bit and Peck, which could be dually occupied by either of them. So I found this song pretty at random. It's called So Good at Being in Trouble by Unknown Mortal Orchestra. And wow. Just wow. Very great contemporary reference for both characters. A good summary for either of them, because while they both know that parts of what they're doing are wrong, if not the whole thing, they just feel so good while they're being in trouble, so to speak. So without rambling for too long, which I feel like once I edit this will still be very substantially too much said and I will cringe watching it over. This is my process. Making playlists, being a total music nerd, I unabashedly accept the title there, and I hope you had fun and learned a little bit of a driving lesson to continue making these horrible puns. I swear I have a better sense of humor than this.